This book is called My Brother Martin. A sister remembers growing up with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's a true story written by Christine King Farris with illustrations drawn by Chris Soenpiet. I have a dream that one day little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. Those words were spoken very dramatically by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his very famous I Have a Dream speech, August 28, 1963. The author of this book is the sister of Martin Luther King Jr. The illustrator, Chris Soenpiet, is a wonderful illustrator who was born in Korea and was adopted by a family from Hawaii when he was 8 years old, went to school in New York City, and is a wonderful illustrator of many books for young learners. Gather around and listen as I share childhood memories of my brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am his older sister, and I've known him longer than anyone else. I knew him long before the speeches he gave, and the marches he led, and the prizes he won. I even knew him before he first dreamed the dream that would change the world. And here is a photo of Christine King Farris. We were born in the same room, my brother Martin and I. I was an early baby, born sooner than expected. Mother dear and Daddy placed me in the chiffon drawer that stood in the corner of their upstairs bedroom. I got a crib a few days afterward. A year and a half later, Martin spent his first night in that hand-me-down crib in the very same room. The house where we were born belonged to Mother dear's parents, our grandparents, the Reverend and Mrs. A.D. Williams. We lived there with them and our Aunt Ida, our grandmother's sister. And not long after my brother Martin, who we called ML, because he and Daddy had the same name, our baby brother was born. His name was Alfred Daniel, but we called him A.D. after our grandfather. They called me Christine, and like 3 peas in 1 pod, we grew together. Our days and rooms were filled with adventure stories and tinker toys, with dolls and Monopoly and Chinese checkers. And although Daddy was an important minister, and Mother dear, who was known far and wide as a musician, often had work that took them away from home, our grandmother was always there to take care of us. I remember days sitting at her feet as she and Aunt Ida filled us with grand memories of their childhood and read to us about all the wonderful places in the world. And, of course, my brothers and I had each other. We 3 stuck together like the pages in a brand new book. And being normal young children, we were almost always up to something. Our best prank involved a fur piece that belonged to our grandmother. It looked almost alive, with its tiny feet and little head and gleaming glass eyes. So, every once in a while, in the waning light of evening, we'd tie that fur piece to a stick and, hiding behind the hedge in front of our house, we would dangle it in front of unsuspecting passers-by. Oh boy, you could hear the screams of fright all across the neighborhood. Then there was the time Mother dear decided that her children should all learn to play piano. I didn't mind too much, but ML and AD preferred being outside to being stuck inside with our piano teacher, Mr. Mann, who would rap your knuckles with a ruler just for playing the wrong notes. Well, one morning, ML and AD decided to loosen the legs on the piano bench so we wouldn't have to practice. We didn't tell Mr. Mann, and when he sat crash, down he went. But mostly, we were good, obedient children, and ML did learn to play a few songs on the piano. He even went off to sing with our mother a time or two. Given his love for singing and music, I'm sure he could have become as good a musician as our mother had his life not called him down a different path. But that's just what his life did. My brothers and I grew up a long time ago, back in a time when certain places in our country had unfair laws that said it was right to keep black people separate because our skin was darker and our ancestors had been captured in far-off Africa and brought to America as slaves. Atlanta, Georgia, the city in which we were growing up, had those laws. Because of those laws, my family rarely went to the picture shows or visited Grant Park with its famous cyclorama. In fact, to this very day, I don't recall ever seeing my father on a streetcar. Because of those laws and the indignity that went with them, Daddy preferred keeping ML, AD, and me close to home where we'd be protected. We lived in a neighborhood in Atlanta that's now called Sweet Auburn. It was named for Auburn Avenue, the street that ran in front of our house. On our side of the street stood two-story frame houses, similar to the one we lived in. Across it crouched a line of one-story row houses and a store owned by a white family. When we were young, all the children along Auburn Avenue played together, even the two boys whose parents owned the store. And since our house was a favorite gathering place, those boys played with us in our backyard and ran with ML and AD to the firehouse on the corner where they watched the engines and the firemen. The thought of not playing with those kids because they were different, because they were white and we were black, never entered our minds. Well, one day ML and AD went to get their playmates from across the street, just as they had done 100 times before. But they came home alone. The boys had told my brothers that they couldn't play together anymore because AD and ML were Negroes. And that was it. Shortly afterward, the family sold the store and moved away. We never saw or heard from them again. Looking back, I realized that it was only a matter of time before the generations of cruelty and injustice that Daddy and Mother Dear and Mama and Aunt Ida had been shielding us from finally broke through. But back then, it was a crushing blow that seemed to come out of nowhere. Why do white people treat colored people so mean? ML asked Mother Dear afterward. And with me and ML and AD standing in front of her, trying our best to understand, Mother Dear gave the reason behind it all. Her words explained the streetcars our family avoided and the whites only sign that kept us off the elevator at City Hall. Her words told why there were parks and museums that black people could not visit, and why some restaurants refused to serve us, and why hotels wouldn't give us rooms, and why theaters would only allow us to watch their picture shows from the balcony. But her words also gave us hope. She answered simply, because they just don't understand that everyone is the same, but someday it will be better. And my brother, ML, looked up into our mother's face and said the words I remember to this day. He said, "Mother dear, one day I'm going to turn this world upside down." In the coming years, there would be other reminders of the cruel system called segregation that sought to keep black people down. But it was Daddy who showed ML and AD and me how to speak out against hatred and bigotry and stand up for what's right. Daddy was the minister at Ebenezer Baptist Church. And after losing our playmates, when ML, AD, and I heard our father speak from his pulpit, his words held new meaning. And Daddy practiced what he preached. He always stood up for himself when confronted with hatred and bigotry, and each day he shared his encounters at the dinner table. When a shoe salesman told Daddy and ML that he'd only serve them in the back of the store because they were black, Daddy took ML somewhere else to buy new shoes. Another time, a police officer pulled Daddy over and called him boy. Daddy pointed to ML sitting next to him in the car and said, This is a boy. I am a man, and until you call me one, I will not listen to you." These stories were as nourishing as the food that was set before us. Years would pass, and many new lessons would be learned. There would be numerous speeches and marches and prizes, but my brother never forgot the example of our father or the promise he'd made to our mother on the day his friends turned him away. And when he was much older, my brother ML dreamed a dream that turned the world upside down. The end. Christine King Farris chose to include this poem by Mildred Johnson at the back of her book. It's called You Can Be Like Martin, a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin was a peaceful boy and peaceful when a man. He wanted peace for everyone all throughout our land. You can be a peaceful child, even a peaceful man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin was an intelligent boy, intelligent when a man. He wanted good schools for everyone, all throughout our land. You can be an intelligent child, even an intelligent man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin was a proud boy, and proud when he came a man. He tried to teach pride to black people all throughout our land. You can be a proud child, and proud when you're a man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin was a reading boy, kept reading when a man. He knew good readers were needed all throughout our land. You can be a reader. Read on when you're a man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin was a speaking boy, kept speaking when a man. His words touched many listeners all throughout our land. You can be a speaker. Speak on when you're a man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin was a praying boy. How he prayed when he was a man. He prayed that men would do right deeds all throughout our land. You can pray in your own way. Pray more when you're a man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin had a dream, that all people would be free, to live and work together in a country filled with peace. You can be a dreamer. Keep dreaming when a man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin Luther King was a warrior of love, a kind and loving man. He wanted all to be loving all throughout our land. You can be kind and loving, grow to a loving man. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. Martin Luther King sang, "We shall overcome," sang it throughout our land. You can overcome, my children. Yes, you can. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. You can be like Martin. Yes, you can. And in this afterword written for grown-ups, Christine King Farris explains that lots of people know about the historical Martin Luther King Jr., the person who got a doctorate in divinity from Boston University, the person who was a Baptist preacher, the person who won the Nobel Peace Prize. But not too many people knew about Martin as a little boy, the Martin who was a child. And that's really why she wrote this book. She is, of course, proud of her brother, but she remembers when he was a sweet and loving child. Also written for grown-ups, this is a little note from the illustrator, Mr. Soenpiet, who explains that he was giving a little presentation for people at the International Reading Association, California, and Martin Luther King's sister approached him and asked him to help work with her on this project. And finally, if you're interested, one of the best places to find out more information about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is the King Center. This is their website address, thekingcenter.org, and they say on today's page, "Join the King Center and world as we commemorate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr." So this true story has been My Brother Martin, a sister remembers growing up with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was written by Christine King Farris and illustrated by Chris Soenpiet.